as we all expected, or should have expected if we didn't, Islam chokes out Moicano in the first round. Now, I was really, really, really hoping that we'd get to see a bit more from Moicano. He looked okay for the time that he did spend in there. It was literally 4 minutes and 5 seconds. But I was surprised. I was pleasantly surprised a little bit by the striking at the very beginning. That's what I'll say. The very beginning, but that is that's a very cherry picking kind of thing to point out, right? There's literally minimal moments. It's obviously takes a moment for every single fighter ever to warm up to the fight, to get used to it, to adjust to the person that's in front of them. So you can't really blame Islam for getting clipped by a few Moicano jabs and hooks. You know what I mean? That's totally acceptable as well for Islam. He didn't even look remotely damaged from it. He did slip at one point, and I thought that was a knockdown from Moicano, but upon replays you can see that it was just a slip. Moicano did kind of catch Islam as he slipped, so you could say it's a combination of the two things, but it relatively was a slip for Islam. Now, Islam goes for the takedown with probably 3 minutes left in the round, maybe 2, and he gets it immediately. He gets Moicano down with the double leg beautifully, gets right on top of him, and they spend a little bit of time in this top position with Islam trying to gain dominance over Moicano. Moicano's doing well off his back, you know, that's somewhat of his realm, he's good there, but as it goes on, Moicano's just being a bit less and less intelligently defensive. I believe there was a get-up from that position. Moicano manages to make his way into somewhat of a scramble to get back to his feet, and then Moicano just catches his neck, and Moicano goes to defend it, and it's not fast enough before Islam just drops down to his butt and is looping his legs over the top of Moicano to grab that squeeze and just force Moicano's neck to just be crunched in underneath the forearm, and the Islam's stomach just pushing his head deeper and deeper into that choke, and Moicano tapped. As soon as it happened, I was like, yeah, of course. I don't know why anybody expected any different. Like, not because Moicano's bad, but because Islam's good. He's really good. I don't know why we thought that maybe Moicano had a chance. He's still good, don't get me wrong. Moicano is still very talented. He's still probably one of the top. I'd argue that he probably is top 5 lightweight. I think he's ranked number 10. I believe there's at least 3 people above him he beats. I think he beats Beneil. I think he beats Michael Chandler. Or maybe he doesn't beat Michael Chandler, but he certainly deserves to be ranked above Michael Chandler. That is the bare minimum. And there's a couple of other fights in there, you know, that people he could plausibly beat. You know, I could see a Moicano getting a lucky win over a Gaethje kind of thing. You know what I mean? I could see a Moicano getting a good win over like a Dan Hooker, someone like that. So I do think he still has the ability, and he said that it's very sad because, and I agree that it's very sad. This is the thing that Moicano has been working for, right? For the last couple of years since he lost to RDA, and he's been on this streak at lightweight with the Brad Riddell fight, onto the Drew Dober fight, onto the Jalen Turner fight, onto the Benoit Saint Denis fight. He's just been getting better and better and getting more and more impressive performances, and this was his road to the title shot, you know what I mean? If anything, you would maybe say that it's kind of lucky that he got given this opportunity, because he's 35 years old. He's probably not going to get any better. He's got 12 months. Moicano maybe has another 12 months in him of where he's probably going to continue to either stay where he is or get a little bit better, like he has been doing for the past 2 to 3 years. But certainly, if he was to have climbed for a title shot normally, and had to have fought Beneil, and then had to have fought after a Beneil, like a top 5 guy, and then maybe a number 1 contender fight after that, we're talking Moicano's nearly 37 by the time, at least 36, nearly 37 by the time he gets to have a title shot. And at that point, I feel like with the statistic being crazy of 155 and below, no one over the age of 35 has won in a championship fight, it probably would have been even less of a capable Moicano. Now, the argument is obviously that it was a short notice. Moicano didn't have time to prepare. He was preparing for 5 rounds, and I said this in my Fight Companion reaction. It's kind of stupid of us to have been considering that was the issue. That it's like, oh, well, at least Moicano's been preparing for 5 rounds. That doesn't matter. Why did we think he was going to last 5 rounds? The issue was that he needed to be prepared to be able to take Islam out. Because he was training for someone like a Beneil, who is not going to be a mauler the way that Islam is. Beneil's still a dangerous guy, don't get me wrong, and if he gets you into these compromising positions, you're going to be somewhat fucked. But not to the level or even remotely close to the level that Islam will do that to you at. So we should have really considered, if anything, whether Moicano was prepared to do a lot of boxing, which granted he did okay in the start, as well as his submission defense, because I didn't really have any high hopes at all about his wrestling. I thought maybe his jiu-jitsu could be helpful for him being on bottom position. Evidently it wasn't. But submission defense is probably the one thing that we should have been like, man, I sure hope that in that Benil camp, Moicano was drilling the shit out of defending Darce chokes and defending rear naked chokes. Like, that's what he's going to be dealing with here. Maybe a Kimura or something like that from Islam. And it wasn't enough. Clearly, any training that he may have done, it wasn't quite enough. So it was sad that Moicano basically said on the mic, I don't know if I'm going to get this opportunity again. I'm getting old. I'm not going to retire, obviously, which I'm glad that he said he's not going to retire. So he's still going to keep fighting. He still thinks he's top level, and I think he's still top level as well. But the elusive title shot opportunity down the path is now gone. He's had that moment spring on him. He's been given the chance, and he failed, unfortunately. But like I said, there's a chance that this was the best chance that Moicano had at getting a title shot, that he may have honestly been in a better position to win this than he would be in 2 years' time when he's older and a little bit more worn out and facing possibly an even better Islam Makhachev if he was still to be champion at the time. So it is what it is. I don't think that Moicano will ever get a title shot again, sadly. I think he's going to have really high-level fights next, but we will have to see what gets announced for him next, who gets announced for him next. Maybe they can make that Paddy Pimblett fight now that Moicano is not really that focused on climbing the rankings, and Paddy will still be focused on climbing the rankings. Moicano's number will look good to Paddy, and perhaps Moicano is just going to look for money fights now and big fights that are going to get him a lot of fan interaction and money and stuff like that, which isn't really going to be in line with rank-based fights. He's going to want to fight his Paddy Pimbletts. He's maybe going to want to fight his Dan Hookers or something like that. Even though Dan Hooker's a high-ranked guy, you know what I mean. We're not looking to get give me a Justin Gaethje number 3 matchup, or give me a blah blah. It's more likely going to be Moicano wants money, ironically. And I'm sure he got paid really fucking well for this. I'm sure that he is very happy with that. He probably got paid like absurdly well. So I'm happy for him, and Islam's a monster. If anything, people can be mad all they want about the matchup being somewhat undeserved or whatever, but this looks really good on Islam's resume. Like, to face a short notice guy who is number 10 ranked, very dangerous, and you didn't get to prepare for him, and to just maul him in the first round, some people would say, well, that's what he should do. And then I would respond with saying, well, if that's what he should do, he did it. So why shit on him for doing something that you say he should do? You can either A, be neutral about it, which is a boring stance to have, or you can be happy about it and praise Islam to an extent of being like, well, good job, he fulfilled the quota that we were hoping he would. Like, it's not like he struggled into the second and third round with Moicano and then beat him. No, he fucking mauled Moicano. Like he probably should when he's number 1 in the world, number 1 pound for pound in the world, facing the number 10 guy in his division who has not fought anybody ranked above him. So, is what it is. Sad to see Moicano. I'm sure he will come back strong against the contender, against maybe they rebook a Dariush fight, or maybe they do the Pimblett fight or something like that. As for Islam, supposedly Dana White has said that Arman will not be getting the next title shot. So that's interesting. Arman might be out for a while. So they're going to book Islam versus Charles. That's what's going to happen. Because tell me right now, why the fuck is Islam going to be out for more than 6 months right now? No reason at all for him to be out any longer than May or June. Like, if he comes back in September, well, he wouldn't. What would happen is it would be October when we go to Abu Dhabi again. If we're just waiting for Abu Dhabi every year, and then Islam fights once in between those fights or something like that, like, what are we doing? That's fine if you're having big long wars, like a Volk 1 or a Poirier fight. But if you maul some guy in the first 4 minutes and you don't take any damage, you barely even got hit, you better be back in 4 months. Okay, you better be back in May. You better be back in June. International Fight Week maybe in July. That's a bit long, but possibly. I think that they're going to book Islam versus Charles. Maybe they do a Brazil. Islam's fought a lot in his home areas more recently. Granted, America's not his home area, but not having to fight overseas. Like he fought in Australia, and then he got to fight in Abu Dhabi after that, and then he fought in America, which is somewhat quite easy for him to fight in. You know, America's pretty easy for anyone to fight in. You give the edge somewhat to the American fighter that gets to fight a foreigner coming to America, but most of the foreign fighters are very, very well prepared to be spending lots of time in America, to train in America, to fight in America, to live in America for months. So it's obviously not as good as if he was fighting in Russia or in Abu Dhabi or something like that, which is the preference for him. But it's nowhere near as bad as in Australia or something like that. So perhaps we see a Brazil card this year. And if we do, perhaps they do Charles versus Islam as the main event in Brazil. I kind of doubt it. I'm just putting it out there because it's a possibility. But I do see Charles being next. I think they will do Islam versus Charles. Arman's going to have to get another number one contender fight, I'd say, which is kind of unfortunate. But maybe this makes a lot of fans happy because people were saying that they should rematch Charles and Arman for 5 rounds anyway, because that fight was so close, and a lot of people think that Charles won the fight. It was pretty close. I'm not too sure if I agree with the fact that you think Charles won the fight, but it is what it is. I think that they give Arman... Maybe you do the winner of Gaethje versus Hooker fights Arman when they come back. That's a pretty good idea if you ask me. Holloway versus Arman's a very good high-level fight. Like, that's just like, there's so much high-level contendership going on there. But styles make fights, and I don't know if that's a good fight. I feel like Arman just wrestle fucks Max Holloway, and that's probably not something that Holloway's interested in. And I don't know if Arman's interested in a BMF fight, which is probably what Holloway's next fight has to be. So I think that they've just announced the winner, not the winner. They've just announced the fights for UFC 314, and it's Pereira versus Ankalaev and Gaethje versus Hooker. So if the winner, I think the winner of Gaethje versus Hooker could face Arman later on this year when he comes back from his injury, because that's only in 2 months. I think 314. It's in April. I think it's in April. It's like 3 months away, maybe. So maybe Arman comes back in 9-10 months time, which is kind of sad because that's a long time for him to be out. But if he's got a back injury, one, that's maybe will to keep him out for a long time, and two, he probably won't have any issues staying out for a long time if it means he gets to have a big level fight. Whereas if you offer him like an Arman versus fucking, I don't know, something dumb, an Arman versus Gamrot or an Arman versus Chandler or something, like there's not really anything for Arman to gain in those fights. I think Gaethje versus Hooker's winner is the only real thing that Arman would have anything to gain from fighting. Because aside from fighting Islam, there is really nothing for Arman to prove. He beat the fuck out of Beneil, and then had a really, really razor close but very, very talent displaying fight with Charles. And he's done the best against Islam out of anyone. And Islam's just beating people more and more aggressively every time now. Like, now he's finishing fights. We had the Volk fight, which was like, ooh, okay, maybe he's human. And then he beats the fuck out of Volk, and you're like, okay, it was short notice. And then he has the Poirier fight, and we're like, see, Poirier makes him look a bit human, but he does still choke Poirier out at the end. And now he's just gone and mollywopped Moicano to show, like, hey, the rankings fucking matter. Like, I'll fight anyone you want me to, but just remember that rankings matter, and if you put low guys in here with me, they're gonna get fucking destroyed. So, we shall see. But like I said, Islam versus Charles 2 is probably next, and I reckon they booked that in like June. Moicano, yeah, you probably do Moicano versus Paddy Pimblett next. Oops, sorry guys. And I think Arman gets the winner of Gaethje versus Hooker. So yeah, man, I hope you guys did enjoy the event. I hope you enjoyed the breakdown. I hope you enjoy any videos that come from it. And thank you for being here. So see you guys all in the next mixed martial arts video. Goodbye.